Some stories don't fade. They haunt. They burn quietly under the skin for decades. Not for how they ended, but for everything they could have been. This is one of those stories. Elena Vale was born into a house of antique mirrors and muffled voices. The Vale estate stood at the edge of a forgotten village. Stone, ivy-wrapped, and too big for warmth. The kind of place where things were kept polished, not personal. Where affection was measured and silence was currency. Her father, Professor Henry Vale, lectured on honor at Cambridge. Her mother hosted tea parties like rituals, and Elena, their eldest, lived in the space between the wallpaper, watching, waiting, writing. She wrote stories no one read, hid them beneath the floorboards. In those pages, she wasn't just a daughter. She was someone. The only person who ever saw her outside of those pages was Jonas Hale, the gardener's son. Born in the estate's servant cottage, raised by a widowed mother who smelled of rosemary and hard luck. He worked the land with hands that were always bruised, but eyes that were impossibly gentle. He spoke rarely, read often, moved like someone who understood grief too well to waste words. They met as children, but by 17, they were gravity. They shared a world of things they couldn't say aloud. Passages passed in books, poems written in dirt with fingertips, glances that made time pause. He would wait for her near the orchard wall. She would bring him old novels with her annotations in the margins. They never dared to dream aloud, but in the spaces between them, hope lived. They kissed once, behind the greenhouse, the glass fogged from the inside, rain on the roof. A moment so perfect it almost felt borrowed. They didn't say I love you. They didn't need to. But the world they lived in was not made for love like theirs. That summer, war arrived in whispers, and with it, Vivienne Northwood, Elena's cousin from London. Vivienne arrived with lipstick like a wound, stories too scandalous for the city, and a way of taking up space that made everyone else smaller. She disrupted a Vale house like a fire through a field. Every man turned to watch her, even Jonas. Even Elena noticed. Vivienne flirted with him the way people swat at moths, brief, careless, without consequence. But Elena noticed the pause in his step, the flicker of something he wouldn't name. It lodged itself in her ribs, an ache she couldn't shake. And all the while, Margot Vale, Elena's 13-year-old sister, watched. Margot was precocious, sharp, obsessive. She mimicked Elena's handwriting, read her hidden stories, followed her like a shadow that never asked permission. She didn't understand what she saw between Elena and Jonas, only that it excluded her. And exclusion, to Margot, was betrayal. One night, everything cracked. Vivienne disappeared after dinner. Hours passed. Then, a scream. She stumbled in from the garden, shoes gone, hair torn, tears streaking her powdered face. She said she didn't remember who it was, that it happened fast, that she was touched, hurt. She pointed nowhere. But Margot stepped forward, said she saw Jonas, said he had argued with Elena earlier that day, said he was angry, said she saw him run. The adults listened. Vivienne didn't deny. And Jonas? Jonas stood silent, not because he was guilty, but because he'd learned by then no one would believe him. They arrested him in the morning. Elena begged her father, screamed until her voice broke.
But decorum was louder than truth in the Vale house. Her mother wouldn't meet her eyes. And Jonas? His face didn't change. As they put him in the car, he met Elena's gaze just once. He didn't mouth words. He didn't cry. He just looked like someone already buried. 3 years in prison. Then, war offered him a way out. He enlisted, disappeared into Europe like smoke and wind. And Elena? She left the estate, left Margot, left her name. She moved to France, taught children, lived alone. She stopped writing. She didn't tell anyone what had happened, not because she wanted to forget, but because remembering without him made her chest hurt. Then one day, a letter came. No return address. Inside, a photograph of Jonas. Older, thinner, smiling faintly in uniform. And on the back, just 4 words. He asked me to. She took the next train to Rouen. He was waiting by the tracks, holding a hat in both hands. No embrace, no apology, only silence. They walked to a room above a bakery. Cheap wallpaper, 2 chairs, 1 bed. They talked for hours about everything except the lie. He told her about the war, the men he saw vanish into dirt, the letters he never sent. She told her about Margot, how she confessed the truth a year after his arrest, that the lie was born of jealousy, that she didn't understand the weight of her words. He listened and finally said, "You tried. That's enough." But his voice trembled when he said that. They kissed like people who still remembered how, and made love like people afraid they never would again. They planned a future, a small bookshop by the sea, a vegetable garden, 2 daughters, maybe a son with Jonas's hands. They held that future like porcelain, too delicate to exist, but too beautiful not to dream. He left before dawn, said he'd write. She watched his figure fade through the morning mist. He never wrote. 2 weeks later, a telegram arrived. Presumed dead. Western Front. No remains. She folded it neatly, placed it in the drawer beside his photograph, and closed it forever. Margot wrote from her deathbed. Cancer. She asked for forgiveness, said the lie was born of jealousy, that she didn't understand the weight of her words. She sat at her bedside, held her hand, but didn't say a word. Margot died still asking. Elena didn't cry. Years passed. The Vale estate aged around her. Dust on velvet, creaking floors, ghosts in mirrors. She began to write again. This time, not stories. A novel. She rewrote the summer of 1940. Vivienne left early. Margot was just a child. No scream, no arrest. In her version, Elena and Jonas built their life by the sea. They opened a bookshop, argued about how to alphabetize authors. He read to her every night. They laughed more than they cried. They grew old together. They died 5 hours apart. She finished the novel on a Tuesday. Read it aloud every July. Same chair, same photograph beside her. And in those pages, he was real again. Elena Vale died at 84. No family, no funeral, only a manuscript and a stack of letters addressed to Jonas Hale. None sent. Each ended the same way. If there is another life, I hope we meet before the silence finds us.